There was a gentleman who attends a church in Ontario, or just outside of Ontario, and he put the video together for us. He said, "Just send me a bunch of pictures and stuff, and I'll throw it together." And he played it. I said, "That song, I don't know that song, but I really like it. What song is that?" And I think it's significant to today. And he said, "It's the song I Will Sing." Well, the Lord tells us if we don't sing to Him, the rocks will cry out. I tell you what, I really enjoy that. I like that song. No, okay. Back to the point of what was going on. We have been there for about 4 years. We've been on the field. Now, when we were here last, we had a plan. That plan didn't quite work out the way we thought. This thing called COVID happened. And so our plan was we were going to go on the field. We were going to work for about 2 years with Steve and Lois Donnelly. Brother Donnelly was in one of those last pictures of us working. Him and the man named Axel Kaiser was there as well. Came up to help us do some work. Actually, at the time, I think we were helping him do some work because that was his apartment at the time that we were working on. But nonetheless, we were planning to work with him for 2 full years. And things were going very well. We got there full time the very beginning of June of 2019, and we got to spend a lot of time together. He spent a lot of time. The idea was a mentorship. He was going to mentor us, he and Mrs. Donnelly. And we did enjoy our time with them, and things were going great at the church. We were seeing 20 to 25 people on a given Sunday in church. We thought, wow, this is incredible. And I honestly, we had some folks that I was looking at and thinking, some days might be people in leadership. I walked in there and I walked up there thinking that we were going to be 15, 20 years in this one spot working, trying to bring somebody into leadership to be the pastor there. And I looked around and I said, wow, this church is growing so fast. It might be 2 terms and we'll have this church, this church will be on its own 2 legs. Well, COVID happened. We had 51 people show up for a Christmas Eve service in 2019. It was incredible. You could barely move in that little building. I thought, oh my goodness, we're gonna have to expand if this keeps going. But we were excited about it, and so Christmas Eve service, we had that. It's a midnight service that we have, and people come out to that. After that, we had a New Year's Eve meal, and almost as many people came to that. And I mean, it really was elbow to elbow, people sitting on top of each other. And I mean, it was great. And then the new year came, and March rolled in, and we got word that there were some restrictions. We were not allowed to meet in person at all. In fact, the restrictions where we were so tight that we weren't even allowed to go over to our next door neighbor's house. Now, it wasn't like a lot of the states in the U.S. were, where it was a suggestion, hey, you really shouldn't do this. No, it was, if you do this, you'll get 1 warning. You do it again, you'll get a $1,000 fine. You do it again, you'll get arrested. That's a little rough. How do you minister and grow a church when you can't go and talk to people, when you can't meet together in person? And in fact, you weren't even allowed to walk outside. You could get fined for being less than 6 feet apart outside. And people were in trouble and fined. And I don't know anyone that got arrested, but there were people that got in trouble, and they had people that would police the roads dressed in these orange vests, and they would go up and down the roads in trucks looking for people breaking the rules. They were hired by the government to do it. And so it was odd. It was. I said I knew we were going to the Arctic. I didn't know it was Siberia. I didn't know it was the whole Russian bloc. But we laughed about it, and we just kept going. We had online services, like a lot of churches resorted to. A lot of times I was sitting. Now, I never did it in my pajamas, so I thought about it a couple times, even on the pajama pants and the dress shirt, or the flannel shirt up top. I thought about it. Never went that far to be in my pajamas. But we sat down in my office a lot of times and had services there. The Donnellys were living in the church building at the time, and they would hold services there in the church building. When we kind of went back and forth, we talked on the phone a lot, but we weren't even allowed to visit each other. And so one day he calls me up. He says, Roy, we can't see each other. I said, no, sir. I can't come to your house. No. You can't come to my house. No. We can't go to church together. No. We can't even really talk together outside. Not really. And he said, we could do this over the phone. What we're doing right now, we can do over the phone. And he said, I think the Lord's leading us. And he asked me first. I appreciate him asking me because he felt bad that he was cutting things short. It hadn't even been a year yet. And he said, we feel the Lord's leading us to plant a church in the Yukon, in Whitehorse. And I said, well, you probably ought to get on it then. We probably ought to do it. And he was very concerned that we had this plan and that we didn't go through with the plan as we originally intended. But he was right. We were just talking over the phone. And so after a while of discussing it and everything, they made their decision to go right down to Whitehorse. They started Northern Light Baptist Church, and they're growing and seeing a lot of fruit there in Whitehorse, where there is a need for a church that can reach indigenous peoples. And so we're thankful for that. However, it wasn't too long after that move that the restrictions started being lifted little by little. We were able to meet in person, but the chairs had to be 6 feet apart from one another. And our little building, we couldn't fit but a couple people, so we waited a little bit longer, kept doing online services. Then they said, well, you can have every household sit together, but everybody else has to be 6 feet apart. So, we can do that. So we set that up. Most people abided by the rules. A few people just did what they did. But we had to all wear masks. That time we weren't allowed to sing. So we said, okay, we won't sing. We'll continue doing this. Now, my American side, it doesn't peak up very often. That American, love my freedom, and you're not going to take my rights away. It was starting to peak up for a while there. And I had the mindset, you know what, we're just going to do what's right and not work. Now, here's the thing. I am an American. Here I have some rights. I don't have rights in Canada. In Canada, I'm a visitor. I have some rights. But I don't have the rights of a citizen. And so I for a moment there, I thought, well, I'll just take the fine. It's okay. We'll just eat the fine and it'll be all right. And the Lord will provide. And I got thinking about, they're not going to fine you, dummy. They're going to kick you out. They'll kick me out of the country. They won't bother giving me a fine or a warning. And so we decided to abide by all the rules as closely as we possibly could. And we did. And it took over a year before we were back to normal. That said, when we started meeting again in person, we had one lady show up. Just one. We're thankful for her. Next couple of weeks, we had 2, then 3, and slowly but surely, our last service, and this happened pretty quick, but our last service, we had 18 people come out for church, and so it's building back up. That said, it's not where we thought we'd be right now. Right now, I thought we'd be moving on. Now, right now in our absence, there's a gentleman named Riley Featherstone. He's coming in. He's filling in for me every other weekend. And on the weekends that he can't fill in, I am doing an online service for our folks. So that way, even in our absence, there's something going on. We're thankful we've seen 16, 15, 14 people coming to every service that Riley's made it to. And so we're grateful that we're seeing that consistency still happening there. So all that said, there's a ton of questions I'm sure that that you guys might have, and I may never get to any of them if I keep talking. So I'll wait and let you guys ask any questions you have at all about our field, about what we're doing, our ministry, or our family. If you don't have any questions. Yes, ma'am. So no one got COVID until right after they lifted the restrictions. We were more than a year into it before we saw our first case in town. The first case came to town while we were in Edmonton waiting on the baby to be born. We also happened to get COVID while we were in Edmonton waiting on the baby to be born ourselves. And so everybody was really pushed to get the vaccines, and we did it for some different reasons. But everybody still got COVID. But thankfully, they were all very mild cases. And I think we had 2 COVID deaths in our region, but they were elders who were in nursing home that were kind of nearing that point themselves. They were already had enough health issues that they didn't have much longer on this earth anyway. And so we're thankful that it wasn't as bad as maybe it could have been. And our medical resources are spread very thin as well. So that's the other side of that. Reason for that. Yes, sir. If you'd asked me that a year and a half ago, I'd have said none at all. None at all. That people are very, as far as toward us, people are very kind to us and very welcoming. There's one gentleman that I know of that does not like us at all. He goes out of his way if he walks past the church to literally look the other way. When he sees me in town, he won't say anything to me. He walks away. And one day he accidentally said something to me. He thought I was someone else. And then he realized who I was, and he turned around and walked away before I could answer his question. And so there is some old shamanism, and that gentleman's involved in that. We've had some interesting experiences. I won't go into all of them. Interesting experiences with people trying to practice shamanism and use it on us, which was very strange, very surreal experience when we realized that's what was happening. Not to be spooky and weird, but that stuff is real. It's not what they think it is. They think they're worshiping nature and worshiping spirits. It's not what it is. It's demonic powers, whatever they may be. And we've witnessed a few things that would make us, they're spooky. It's just spooky. Outside of that, and the very few rare occasions with that, most people are very welcoming to us and very kind to us. Not everyone understands the gospel. You know, it takes a long time for them to recognize that we're teaching something different from other churches and other denominations. But they're very welcoming to us, and they recognize that what we're preaching is out of the Bible. The problem is they don't recognize that what we're preaching out of the Bible is different from what they've learned growing up. It takes time to get to that point. And so people are very receptive for the most part. Yes, ma'am. So thankfully, sure. Well, first of all, we're a town of just under 1,000 people. It's about a 2-hour drive on a gravel road to the next town, and we are the end of the road. We walk out of our front door, which is also the front of the church. We walk out our front door, and we see the Arctic Ocean right there in front of us. And so we are the end of the road. We're 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle. We're above the tree line. We don't have trees that grow in our town. I have to go an hour and a half to see a tree. Really, you drive an hour and a half for the first tree. And my son, during COVID, we never made any trips out. And the first time we drove south after COVID restrictions were kind of lifted a little bit, he saw trees and he went nuts. Trees, wow, you know. And they were like skinny little spruces, and he was amazed. And so the language, Inuvialuktun, Sigleton is the dialect of Inuvialuktun that's there. That would be the first language there. However, Catholic and Anglican missionaries came in the 1800s, and right up until the late 90s, there were these residential schools that were run by them, and parents were forced to send their kids to these schools where the kids were very much abused. They took them at my son's age, 6 years old and up. They would go and have to live there, sometimes for years at a time, without seeing parents. Someone shared a letter that they found in their parents' boxes and things that they passed away that had a letter written to parents saying, "It is your privilege to have your children home for Christmas. And if you don't abide by these regulations while they're home, we won't let you do it next year." That was the mindset that the government and the Catholic Church owned the children. These kids were brought in, and if they spoke their language, they were beaten for it. They had to speak English or had to speak French, depending on what part of Canada it was. There's some horrible stories that are wrapped up in it. sum it up, there are thousands and thousands of unmarked graves of children all across Canada from these residential schools. And there's a movement now. You saw the orange shirts in the picture and the sign we were holding up. There's a movement to have those bodies exhumed and find the families and let the families know what happened to their kids, because some families don't even know where their kids went. They just were taken away by a priest and an RC, a Mountie, and they never saw their kid again. No word. And so there's a movement to resolve that. That said, because that has happened, Inuvialuktun is a dying language. There are a few elders that still speak it and can understand it and use it conversationally, but there's very few, and they're becoming much older. And so they're trying to revive the language and keep it. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. It looks like that language is going to die out. And so everyone right now, pretty much their first language is English. So I hate to say there's an upside. There's not an upside to it. It's horrible what happened. However, we are fortunate that we can preach and teach in English. I wish that we had to learn Inuvialuktun to reach them, but that's not the case. Yes, sir. It is very, very high up there, cost of living. I could do all the dividing it up and stuff and explaining the math, but basically, they sell gas by the liter, but gas comes out to about $10 a gallon up that way. And I always say Coke Zero. I like Coke Zero a lot. A 12-pack of Coke Zero costs $20 up that way. A gallon of milk is about 15-ish dollars. It fluctuates a bit. Now, what's interesting is the whole egg thing everybody talks about down here. The eggs down here are pretty close to the same price we pay. So the eggs are similarly priced here to what we have up north. So it is very expensive. That said, there's a lot of government jobs that are there. There's a lot of support for scientists coming up and studying, mostly global warming is what they're studying. A lot of support from the indigenous folks there to do that. There was a lot of oil exploration going on up there. The current prime minister, from what I understand, put a lot of red tape around that to where the oil industry pulled out of the area. Kind of similar to what we've seen happen here with coal. Kind of got pulled out, the rug out from under them. And now there is a natural gas well that they're trying to open up there. And so that'll bring some jobs. There are some folks that do some outfitting. I always ask this, if there's anyone here who likes to hunt. We're West Virginia. I know there's a ton of people here that like to hunt. You can hunt a polar bear. Now, you can't bring it back across. Polar bear is illegal to bring across into the U.S., but you can go up and hunt a polar bear. It'll cost you $50,000. And that's to pay for all the outfitters and stuff. And so there is a tourism movement up there where we're making a little bit of money from tourism. Other than that, there's a ton of government subsidy. And there are some people that still trap and hunt and fish, care for their families. They work very hard, but they're also on government subsidy at the same time. And so a lot of government subsidized housing and things. And so there's not money in trapping that used to be. It used to be when somebody was a trapper, 1 year of foxes could buy a house. And actually, there were guys that bought houses with 1 year worth of fox. The next year, the guy bought a new snowmobile and a new truck. And, that was a normal thing up into the 80s. But now it's a little harder with the fur trade. Yeah. Any other questions? Give you guys a chance. Anyone? Yes, ma'am. So we have oil heat, which is pretty expensive. It's basically diesel fuel, and it's similar to the gas. It's very expensive. I also use wood heat. You saw in the video the logs and stuff that I was hauling. I have to go out get driftwood out of the ocean, and so I'll go out during the wintertime. That's when I prefer to do it because it's less dangerous. And I go out with basically an axe and a chainsaw, and I chop away the ice around a log, and then I take a farm jack and I jack it up out of the ice, and then we cut it into 8-foot lengths, throw it in a sled and drag it home and process it. And it saves us a ton on heating costs to do that. And it's also a good way to get out and spend time with some of the guys there. Every now and then I can get out with those guys and actually build a relationship with some of the guys working together. But yeah, that's how we heat it. Yes, sir. Kind of similar. You'll see 2x6 and 2x8 walls, but they have a really high rated insulation. At our church building / apartment, our siding that we have is actually, it has a insulative quality to it. It has a foam on the backing on it. You also insulate under your house, and you don't just have skirting, you actually seal up the underbelly of your house. You get under it and you enclose it with plywood all the way across so wind can't go up in. So there's a lot of insulation in the homes. We also have triple pane windows, which I don't know how much difference they really make, but it seems like it helps. They make you pay enough for them, but they work. Most homes will have a little porch and a mudroom. We were talking about the other day, we need to build an enclosed porch at some point at our building because we feel it when somebody walks in right away, cold just rushes through the house. And so we're talking about doing that ourselves. But we have a mud room, but it's not really separated. It's like a little foyer for the church that we have. But most homes have a mud room and a enclosed porch. Sure. Yes, sir. I always forget what the record low is. Justine, what was our record low that we saw? -70. So we saw -70. Now, mind you, it got to -70 and then it came back up. So it was just there for a little short time, -70. Most of the time we'll see -40 in the winter is pretty typical. -20 is good working weather. You can work outside -20. Now, mind you, our gear is rated for -70. My boots are rated for -100, and I got those sealskin or otter mitts that you see out there. So we're geared up, and we're like the Michelin Man walking down the road. But it does, you can stay warm. I can sweat in 40 below in all my gear, believe it or not. And so, yeah, it's not as bad as it sounds. It is cold. Don't get me wrong, it is cold. I have had frostbite on 3 occasions. Thankfully, they've all been up here. Your face heals very quickly, unless it's your nose or ears. I had frostbite here, and I had frostbite right in here. And it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's no fun, but it's not that bad. The worst part is you get stuck inside for a few days while it heals. That's the worst part of it. And so now, that said, if you get it on your hands or your feet, that's another story. That doesn't heal as quickly. But as far as the summertime goes, we saw it hit up to 80 last year. It actually hit 80 a couple of days. The ice in the ocean melts and breaks up in June, and then it'll refreeze again end of October, beginning of November. But the sun during that summertime stays up and it circles the whole place. The sun doesn't set for about a month and a half. The sun stays in the sky. And then for about a month and a half in the winter, the sun never rises. It stays below the horizon. And so it took some getting used to, but we love it. We really do enjoy it. That's a good note to get into my very short lesson here, okay? Philippians chapter 4. And I'm going to read verse 13. You guys could quote it, but and then we're going to back up again. Verse 13, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. You guys have heard that verse. You probably learned it. Maybe some of you have learned it as a kid. The fact is, if you watch many celebrities. At some point, you'll hear a celebrity quote this and misapply it. I've heard a lot of celebrities quote. I've heard a lot of athletes quote it. I've seen athletes and celebrities tattoo it on themselves and say, "That's right, I can do whatever. I can do anything. It's right here." And they'll make a muscle and say, "Because Christ strengthens me." And I say, "Oh, I'm glad that they know that verse." Problem is they misapply it. You see, they say things like a guy's going into the championship basketball game. He says, "There you go, 4:13. Jesus is going to let me win. I can do all things through Christ." They take it as, I can do whatever I want because Christ strengthens me to do it. You know, it's just taking the American dream and applying it to Scripture. You know, hey, you can have anything you want if you work hard enough. That's what they're teaching. And that's not at all what this verse says. Here's what I always wondered. What if there are two teams playing each other, and this guy had a Philippians 4:13 tattoo, and the guy on this other team had a Philippians 4:13 tattoo, and they go and say, "I can do all things." This guy says, "I can do all things." Somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose, right? Who can really do all things through Christ? Well, as we read further back in verse 11, we'll start in verse 11. "Not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. I know both how to be abased and how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed, both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me." Now, Paul is writing this. Now, there's debate about where he's writing it from. Was he writing from the Mamertine prison, or was he writing it from house arrest in Rome? Either way, he was in prison, okay? He was under arrest, and he was waiting on a verdict. A little further back in this letter, he said, Timothy is going to wait here and see how it goes with me and come back and report to the Philippian church. Timothy's waiting to hear the verdict. Is Paul going to be executed? Is Paul going to be staying in prison for a few more years? Is Paul going to be released? That's what Paul's going through right now. He's sitting there and he's suffering need. He's suffering in this way. And he says here, I've learned what sort of state I am therewith to be content. I know both how to be abased, low, and how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, to abound and to suffer need. That word suffer there sticks out to me. When Paul first met Christ and he was blind for 3 days, the Lord said that he would show Paul what great things he must suffer for his name's sake. That means, my understanding of that is, it was God's will from the beginning of Paul's relationship with him. From the moment Paul was saved, it was God's perfect will that Paul would suffer some things for him. He would go through some difficult times. But you see, he wasn't going through it alone. He was going through it with Jesus Christ. You see, he understood, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. Now, the reason I say this is because, and nobody said it here today. Don't get worried. Nobody has said it today. And if you do say it, if you slip and you do say it, it's okay. I know what you mean. But almost every church I go to, in deputation it happened a lot. It happens a lot in furlough too. People will say things like, I'm glad you're in the Arctic because I could never do it. Oh, I don't like hearing that. Another one is pastors, and your pastor isn't going to say this because he was one, but pastors will say things like, now, these missionaries are on the front lines. They're the Green Berets of Christianity. They're the special forces. Oh, I don't like that either. You see, Paul says what he was in the beginning of Philippians. We're not going to go there. He says, servant of Jesus Christ, or a minister. That's all we are. All we are people that said yes. The Lord called us. I think I told you guys this last time I was here. I hope this illustration still, it works sometimes. Sometimes people just go, no, never mind. I feel like McDonald's on Valentine's Day. Now you go, well, what do you mean McDonald's on Valentine's Day? How many of you ever tried to get a reservation on Valentine's Day, the day of, at a nice restaurant? You call one nice restaurant and they say, sorry, we're busy. Right next to a nice restaurant. You go down the line, but you know where you can always go on Valentine's Day and they won't have a line? They won't be too busy to serve you? You can go to McDonald's. It's not fancy. It's not that great. But they'll feed you. They'll do whatever. They'll serve you. I feel like the Lord went down the list. He's like, this guy's I know this isn't how God's will works. Please don't misunderstand. This is the way I feel sometimes. The Lord goes down the list, says, this guy's a great preacher. I'm going to call him to go to the Arctic. And he lays Tuktiatuk on this guy's heart. And the guy says, whoa, I'm right here. I'm busy right here where I am, Lord. I'm happy with this. I'm too busy for that. Well, no, he won't do it. So he goes to the next guy. Oh, he won't do it. And this guy over here, well, he's sharp. He's the smartest guy in the church. And he said, would you go? And he says, no, I'm teaching Sunday school here. I'm doing good here. I'm busy, Lord. And then he finally gets down the list. He's like, well, nobody else is going. And he says, well, I guess maybe Roy will do it. Hey, Roy, would you do it? And I go, yeah, okay. You see, because I'm just simple enough to read a verse like Philippians 4:13 and say, I can do all things through Christ. Not because I'm smart, not because I'm a good preacher, not because of any of that stuff, but because I have Jesus Christ with me, the Holy Spirit indwelling me. Here's what bothers me about that statement. I could never. I got 2 more minutes. I could never. There are people who have lived in the Arctic and in the deepest, darkest jungles of Africa or South America, and they have lived there for thousands and thousands of years. They have made it by the sweat of their brow, by their own hard work and determination, and they did it without Christ. What do we say when we say, I am indwelled with the Holy Spirit? I have Jesus Christ with me. I can do all things through Christ, but I can't do that. We're saying those people were better off than us, I guess. Listen, the Lord will never call you to anything that he will not equip you to do. Now, some of you are going, well, I really can't have a physical ailment. Well, if you really cannot do something, the Lord won't call you to it. Okay? The Lord will call, whatever the Lord calls you to, he will equip you to do it. And it's not because you're a great preacher. It's not because you're so smart. It's not because you're such a hard worker. It's because God is good and he provides. I could sit here all day and I don't have time to do it. I could sit here all day and tell you all the ways that the Lord worked through and or in spite of my own stupidity and my own weakness. And the Lord provided, and the Lord was glorified through something because I was too dumb, I was too weak to figure it out for myself, and the Lord provided. And it's incredible to see how the Lord works. I hope you guys are willing to do all things through Christ, for Christ. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for this day and all you've given us. Thank you for sending your son down the cross for us, Lord. I thank you you do enable us to serve you. I thank you for the privilege to serve you. Lord, I ask that you work through the services, all the services today, Lord, and that you'd use your word in people's lives. I ask that you'd make us more like you, keep us in your will.